This is the regular meeting of the Charter Commission's Redistricting Advisory Selection Work Group for April 21st, and that meeting will now begin.
Good afternoon, everyone, or good morning, I should say. We usually have our meetings in the afternoon, but today is special. Welcome to this virtual meeting of the Charter Commission's Redistricting Advisory Member Selection Work Group. This meeting includes the remote participation of members as authorized under Minnesota statutes, Section 13D.021, due to the declared local health pandemic. The city will be recording and posting this meeting to the meeting's website and to its YouTube channel as a means of increasing public access and transparency. This meeting is public and subject to the Minnesota Open Meeting Law. For the record, my name is Andy Kozak, and I am one of the co-chairs of the Charter Commission's Redistricting Advisory Member Selection Work Group. I'll now call this meeting to order and ask the clerk to call the roll so that we may verify the presence of a quorum.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Present.
Smith. Commissioner Smith.
I believe he had an excused absence.
Thank you. Commissioner Chair Clegg.
Here. Hi, Peggy.
Hi, Barry. Co-Chair Garcia.
Present.
Co-Chair Kozak.
I'm here.
There are 4 commissioners present.
Good. Let the record reflect we have a quorum, and we will now proceed to our agenda, a copy of which was posted for public access to the city's legislative information management system, which is available at lims.minneapolismin.gov. So first of all, let's look at the agenda, and can we, commissioners? It's before us. I'm sure you've gotten the emails with the agenda. May I please have a motion to adopt the agenda? Is there a second?
So moved.
Second, Hawkins.
Good. Thank you. Is there a discussion before the clerk calls the roll? Seeing none, I'll ask the clerk to call the roll on the motion.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commission Chair Clegg.
Aye.
Co-Chair Garcia.
Aye.
Co-Chair Kozak.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
Thank you. That motion prevails. Now we need a motion to accept the minutes. Is there a second for that? A motion and a second for that?
So moved, Garcia.
Second, Clegg.
Thank you. Any discussion? If not, the clerk could please call the roll.
Commissioner Hawkins.
Aye.
Commission Chair Clegg.
Aye.
Co-Chair Garcia.
Aye.
Co-Chair Kozak.
Aye.
There are 4 ayes.
Good. Thank you very much. The next item on the agenda, I believe, is the chair's report. All I will say is this is the second to the last. This is the penultimate, the second to the last meeting. We do have one more where we will finalize what our recommendations are and conclude the work, at least conclude the work of this section of our job. And I want to thank a number of people, Carol Bethune, Nicole, certainly, Nicole Weber, and Jill Garcia, and for doing the lion's share of the work to get us ready for this meeting and to prepare the materials that we're going to discuss shortly. And then also I want to welcome our old friend, our legendary clerk, Peggy Menchik, who came back with us at least for today. So we want to all welcome her. So Does anyone else have anything else to offer before we start? If not, we'll look at item 5.1 on the agenda, and it's reviewing the second draft of the Redistricting Authority Advisory Group application and job description. Is there any discussion?
Charlie, would you be able to share your screen of the application I just posted in the chat?
Yep, I'm pulling it up right now. Just
Thank you so
being
much.
slow.
As you can see, this is a reproduction mainly of the one from 10 years ago, but I think there have been some changes. So you might want to, once you give folks another minute maybe to read that tiny text and then start scrolling down.
Chair Kozak, I'm not sure if you can see, but Commissioner Clegg does have his hand raised.
Sure. Commissioner Clegg.
Thank you. I just note that on page 2, it refers to those who are employed by political parties or the city are excluded from advisory group membership. It seems to me we ought to have a parenthetical there that says service as an election judge is not considered employment by the city.
Okay, I think some places I recall, Nicole, could you help me? At some place I recall seeing, maybe it was on the other side, that election judge is not disqualifying, or maybe that was just there from the last time.
I do know for certain it is in the job description, but it does not hurt for us to go ahead and add that in this section as well
agree.
on this document.
I agree. Can you put that in? Without objection, we'll put that in.
Chair Kozak?
Commissioner Garcia.
Oh, excuse me. It is in the last question, in the last yes or no question.
Okay.
On page 2, it's in the very last one as well. So I support repeating it, but just so it's far enough apart, so it's not repeated in too close of succession. Thank you.
Good. I thought I remembered it from our discussions, and yeah, it's good to put it up there at the top, because otherwise if an former election judge sees that, they might say, oh, I'm ineligible, and quit. So good. Anybody else have any suggestions on this?
This is Commissioner Hawkins. I don't have a suggestion, but on that same page where it says, do you plan to leave your Minneapolis, your permanent residence through the period of, there's need to be a space between period and of. In the yes and no part.
Okay, let's see.
Yep, it's right there where the.
Right, yeah, period. It should be period space of. Yeah, without objection, that'll go in. That correction will be taken care of. Anybody else? Oh.
Can we, yes, thank you. Can we go back up to the first page, because I want to make sure the question regarding election judge work, in that final box there, the yes or no section, it does say during the period, have you been or will you be, and there's some spacing problems there as well that need to be corrected. But that bottom question does say an employee of Minneapolis city government other than as an election judge. Does that suffice, or do we need Chair Clegg, do you have an opinion? Does that change your opinion on the edit?
Thank you. I just think that every time we refer to the fact that you're ineligible if you're an employee of the city, we should include something that says other than as an election judge, because
Okay.
somebody may find it first in a different section and may just say, well, I should stop right now. So.
Okay, thank you. And just to be clear, I am making these edits. Charlie is sharing his screen and it's a PDF version. So the edits are being made. You're just not seeing them happen in real time on the screen. So.
Good. Is there anybody else? Charlie, did you have your hand? Is that you that has the hand up?
Christina Kendrick from NCR is seeking recognition. She's our partner for community outreach. So.
Okay, this says number 9. Yeah, please go ahead.
Hello, everyone. My name is Christina Kendrick. I'm with the Department of Neighborhood and Community Relations, or you can call me number 9 if that feels better. The few suggestions that I had is I think it would be important to, if these are going to be posted online, which I'm hearing that they are, is to have reference links to each other, such as a link to the job description or the committee description, if you will, in the application, and vice versa. You know, once we go through the job description, we should have a link to the application as well. The other thing too, when we are asking what do you bring to the diversity of this group, for me personally sounds clunky. I would ask the group to consider using language such as diverse perspective or diverse voice, not just diversity, because that feels almost tokenism or targeting, my personal opinion.
Okay, could you suggest, could we go back to where that is on the
It's on the second page.
on the second page?
Mm-hmm. Where you ask, please describe how you will bring diversity to the redistricting group. I just, to me, it feels better if you ask, please describe how you will help bring a diverse perspective or a diverse voice to the redistricting group.
I think diverse perspective, I like diverse perspective. Does anybody else have any suggestions?
I agree, diverse perspective.
Okay. Well, without objection, let's put that in. Can you include that, Nicole? Ms. Weber? Ms. Weber?
Yes, I can. Thank you.
Okay. Good. Anybody else want to? Oh, somebody blinked. I can't tell who it is.
Commissioner Kozak, this is Carol Bashoon.
Oh,
I just noticed that just with the track changes, there's 2 questions. See where there's at the very top, there's a lot of small print, and at the very end of that small print, it says, are you able to devote the time required for participation on the advisory group? That's a separate question that should be in a separate box. I think just with the track changes, it just came out that way. So that's intended to be a separate question with a yes or no.
oh. From what I can see, I think I think I agree. This print is kind of small for my eyes, but I think from what I can see, does anybody have any comment on that?
This is Commissioner Hawkins. I agree with Carol. That is a separate question that needs its own box with the yes and no.
Perfect.
And this is Christina Kendrick again from NCR. That might be the spot, due to the ambiguity of that question, where you would put a link to the job description, which I believe gives more detail as to what time commitment they're actually signing up for.
And so you're suggesting that there's the link that we put a link in to the large so that they can get more details?
Just to ensure, it's just kind of covering bases, just so folks have an opportunity to make sure that they're reviewing what they're being asked to commit to.
Okay.
And this particular question, which I also agree needs to be separate due to the time commitment, which is pretty extensive for a volunteer committee. So they just have an opportunity to review what they're being asked to commit to.
That sounds reasonable. What about anybody else have a comment? I'm sorry, but I don't know. So I think whoever is 964, I think blinked, but nobody's blinking now. Anybody have any comments on what Ms. Kinder is suggesting? If not, we'll ask that without objection, we'll ask that be put in. Ms. Weber, do we have that in?
Yes, we do. Thank you.
Does that work? Okay, any other comments? Well, I think does that conclude what we have for 5.1?
Well, it's actually a lumped agenda item. There's also the job description itself listed as 5.1.
Okay.
So I will provide that now to
Okay.
Charlie to share.
No, that's what I recall. That's what we worked on yesterday also. Okay. And this gives any potential applicant hopefully some idea of what's involved, right?
Correct, Mr. Chair.
Yeah, specifying duties, as I recall, our discussion is it's hard to get real specific. So, but if anybody has any suggestions, they're certainly welcome to offer them up.
Chair Clegg, I'm sorry. Chair Kozak?
Yes.
I would like to provide for Ms. Kendrick, I believe the 7th bullet point is the way we referenced diversity.
Right.
So just to see how that sounds to you.
And we spent some time, that was, we spent some time on that, as I recall.
This is Christina. Yeah, okay. I was assuming that was it. My apologies. I'm sitting with it for a minute. Just for efficiency, we can move this along and come back to it if that's possible.
Sure. Well,
I just want to think about it. Diversity has, so there's a spectrum of what people think of as far as a definition of diversity. So I know what I feel like I understand what the committee is trying to accomplish with that. I'm just trying to figure out in my own brain if it's coming across appropriately.
Well, we
So
can,
feel free to move on.
okay, we can go on. I will say that I think the first draft of this did not have demonstrate understanding. What we did not want to do was suggest or imply, however strongly, that you have to be one of the diverse groups in order to be seriously considered for the group. And so that's what but we wanted to express some way of saying that we wanted to understand the screening process. We wanted to be through the screening process. We wanted to be able to discern that people did have breadth and depth of understanding of diversity and how important it was to the process. But take a look at it. Let's move on, and we'll come back before we end the discussion on this piece and see if you've got any suggestions for us. As you can see the excused absences. Anybody have any suggestions on that?
This is Commissioner Hawkins, is there definition or descriptions between excused and unexcused absence that they would have?
I'll defer to Commissioner Clegg or to Casey. I think excused means you called in, and you don't have to tell what the excuse is. I mean, unexcused means you just didn't call in and nobody knew, nobody heard from you. And so that goes down is that correct, Casey?
Mr. Chair, I'm sorry I wasn't immediately responsive. I'm looking up in the commission's rules itself for definitions, but the general description you gave is correct. An excused absence is where a member has given advance notice prior to the meeting that they cannot attend versus an unexcused absence where there was no such contact.
Okay. And what about, does anyone have any suggestions about putting in there what the process is for getting excused? Is this the right place for it, or is it necessary that we even do that?
Chair Kozak?
Yeah, Commissioner Clegg.
Our rules provide for regular charter commissioners that each commissioner will provide the charter commission coordinator with notice of inability to attend at least 24 hours prior to the time of a scheduled meeting, and excused absences may be granted by the chair or his or her designee.
Okay, is that something we should put in the application at this point? Or the description of the duties, so that people know what the difference between excused and unexcused is?
Commissioner Kozak, this is Carol Bashoon. I think it's only fair if we're going to say you can be removed. I mean, for more than three unexcused absences, then I think we need to let people know what the process is. That's my legal analysis of it. So they know in advance what they need to do, and they won't be removed without knowing what the process was.
Okay.
Other people might have a differing opinion, but that's my opinion.
Okay.
Carol, it's Casey. Would it be sufficient to just copy Rule 2.1.6 from the Commission's rules, which Chair Clegg quoted, and I've put into the chat, and just incorporate that, because that's the entire rule about calling in for an excused absence?
Yeah, I think that would be a good idea. So then they know exactly what the process is, and then they can decide whether they want to be a part of this position then.
Okay, I see. That makes that makes sense. But I see a couple hands up. One unidentified, nice smile. The little logo, the little icon. Just unmute and chime in.
This is Commissioner Perry.
Oh, okay.
From the Rules Work Group. I would just say we were going to, when we discussed this in the Rules Work Group, we were going to use the rule for unexcused and excused that was applicable to the Charter Commission at large. And so I think the suggestion of putting in, inserting Rule 2.1.6 and 7 makes sense to me. We would be doing the same thing in the rules.
Well, as long as they're consistent, I think they could go in both places.
Yes.
Okay.
This is Commissioner Hawkins. I still had my hand up. I'm sorry. I just totally agree that we have to give people a reason to understand why they're being excused. I'm sorry. I'll lower my hand.
No, that's okay. Thank you. Anybody else? If nobody else, Ms. Weber, do you have all that? Can you make sense of all that?
Yes, I have notes for myself. I'll make sure that the full descriptions are inserted into our next draft for review.
Okay, thank you. So without objection, that'll happen. Any other discussion, any other changes before we get back to the diversity clause?
And Commissioner Kozak, I am, this is Christina again. I am able to offer
Okay.
an opinion.
And if you do that, excuse me, if you'll do that, that'll be fine. And I believe we have Commissioner Sandberg has a suggestion, but why don't you lay yours out, and then we'll give Jan a chance to respond.
Okay, sure. Before I respond, I want to understand that the point of this particular bullet is the goal of the redistricting is to minimize the redrawing of lines as much as possible and to keep current geographic specificity intact. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that's fair. The general rule is that you don't make changes that the population, that the census numbers don't really require.
Support. Sure. So my offer then is this rewording, and I can send it to Nicole, and I'll read it slow because I actually wrote it out. Demonstrate depth and breadth of understanding of the importance of maintaining the city's geographic diversity in the redistricting process.
Can you say that? Can you go through that once more, please?
I will. Because I'm thinking more about the job description of the who's ever applying, what they're tasked to do, versus who they are as a person, as far as far as
right.
Age, gender, race, ethnicity, etc. So exactly. Demonstrate depth and breadth of I should say of the understanding of the importance of maintaining the city's geographic diversity in the redistricting process. And the main thing, oh, thank you. I see that Casey did post my thought in the chat room for folks who need to look at it like I do. But I will say it again, demonstrate depth and breadth of understanding of the importance of maintaining the city's geographic diversity in the redistricting process, which is more of a task versus a requirement of a person and who and how they identify. I think that's what I had a problem with, is making this statement a task versus who you are as a person and how you identify.
Okay, I think we
Does
have.
that make sense?
Yes, I think we have that. And anybody else? I have, let's see.
Chair Kozak,
Yes, oh,
this is Jill Garcia. I just wanted to just further add that I think our intention was to say, you're on this group because you understand the importance of diversity as it relates to the city. And we want you on this group to articulate that and to, so you don't have to be a member of a diverse community, but if you are, whatever the unique array of diversity it is that you have and that you bring, that we want on this group, we want you to be able to bring that to each and every meeting and represent that, if that helps.
yeah, I think that's what we tried to get at. And I'll take some of the blame for, it's not a very artful way we put it. And I think Commissioner Garcia explains exactly what we were trying to get at. That you don't have to be one of this group, but you have to be able to, we hope you can demonstrate the concerns that she outlined. Ms. Kendrick, how does that square with what you're trying to do?
Absolutely. Like I said, I feel that I understood what throughout this whole job description, you were trying to achieve.
Mm-hmm.
I just, to ensure that it's presented appropriately, is to make sure that the language we're using is about task driven, especially since this is a job description about what you're expected to bring and do,
Mm-hmm.
versus language that points to how someone identifies, especially since we're looking for folks who understand across the board,
Right.
how important it is to really take into consideration all of the domains of community into perspective when they're talking about redrawing, wards, etc., parks, boundaries, all that. So I was just wanting to reframe that particular bullet to make it more about an action item versus about who you are and how you identify.
Right, and that's what we tried to do, because the original language kind of implied that, it did imply that you should be a member of one of these, one of the groups, the enumerated groups, and we wanted to make sure that you didn't have to be a member of the group in order to be considered. So that's, I think we're getting close. But I have, who is CB? I'm sorry.
That's
Mr. Chair,
Commissioner
Mr. Chair,
Kozak.
Commissioner Sandberg is next in line, and then
okay.
Carol Bashoon.
Oh, okay, Commissioner Sandberg. Yeah, I haven't forgotten.
That's okay. You're fine. I understand what Ms. Kendrick is saying, but I think what you all are trying to get at is to demonstrate the depth and breadth of understanding the importance of the city's diversity in the redistricting process. It's not just geographic, that's just a tiny part of it. And in fact, it's more true for wards, I believe, than for park districts than it is for wards. But, and again, you're absolutely right, though. This was never about a person's specific characteristics. It was about their what did they know? What was their experience? What was their understanding? Who have they worked with? Went way beyond something like their gender. It went beyond understanding other issues. So, but I don't think it's just geographic.
Did you have a suggestion to?
Yep, I would drop the maintaining the and geographic. So I'd say demonstrate depth and breadth of understanding the importance of the city's diversity in the redistricting process. And maybe that's not good either, but definitely not just geographic.
Okay. Ms. Kendrick, what do you think? Does that?
Yeah, well, that would be the original statement. I'm not married to anything, so I'm only making suggestions. And I will be completely transparent when it comes to the whole redistricting process. I'm still myself understanding what that whole process is. So if it's not specific to the cities, as we're drawing boundary lines and thinking about what that particular community is, which is why I inserted geographic. If you're so then I have to sit on it again. In the original statement, you know, that's fine.
Commissioner Sandberg, would you restate what you just, how you, I think you added the term array, right?
Oh, that was before I made an early suggestion that that's fine. I think on this one there's a slight language shift that's a little bit different, and it may be important or not, but it was demonstrate depth and breadth of understanding the importance of the city's diversity in the redistricting process. It's a little bit different than what the original language above, and maybe it's not an improvement. I leave that to your committee members, but the idea was that the whole range of diversity, again, not who you are, but what you understand, your experiences and so forth are important, and that we acknowledge the importance of diversity of many different whatevers. Right. I am not articulate today. I'm sorry.
That's because it's the morning. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I was gonna let Ms. Kendrick know and invite her. Ms. Bashoon does a wonderful orientation about redistricting and what the legal requirements are in terms of geography and community of interest, what shapes are and are not acceptable. So I would invite you to attend that, if anything, because I found it very fascinating. It was very, very interesting. And as the redistricting process goes on, one thing that I found last time is that those members of the redistricting group or city staff, if there's anything that looks like it may creep up on violating any of those essential required elements, we're really good at kind of saying, wait a minute, you know, that doesn't look right according to community of interest considerations. So it's a very interesting, fascinating process.
I think maybe Commissioner Garcia might have maybe you put your finger on. Ms. Kendrick talked about geography, and this is about more than geography, but you added community of interest, right? Maybe we could work with that. Geography and community of interest are the factors that we need to make sure that diversity is an ingredient as we make decisions on the basis of community of interest and geography, because you know, that's really what we and as a practical matter, that's really what we do. We look at the geography, the demography, and the community. And community of interest was always a part of the decision, one of their criteria, because that's why we resisted splitting up neighborhoods and that sort of thing. So,
however, I would add that people at this stage, reading through the application, don't know what community of interest means. It's only afterwards. So I would stick to, my recommendation is just sticking to the more common utility of words. And I believe Ms. Bashoon has something to add.
Yes. Ms. Bashoon?
Yes, Chair Kozak. I do like Jan's revision to the language. I think that it is getting too detailed when we start talking about geography and community of interest. We also have to look at neighborhood groups. We also have to look at any kind of illegality if we're, I forget all the terminology, cracking and, you know, where we're taking groups and putting them together so that they lose their voter authority, they lose a lot of power in voting, or if we're cracking them apart so that they lose their voter ability. So
Cracking and packing.
cracking and packing, thank you. I keep wanting to say fracking, but I know that's wrong. So yeah, we don't want to, we have to watch things like, we don't want to pack them so that they lose more voter power, or crack them so that they don't have any voting power. So there are so many things that we have to look at. So I don't think we should get too detailed. I did like what Jan said. The other thing we could do is we could follow the change that we made in the application, and say just help bring a diverse perspective when engaging in the work of the redistricting group. So something to the effect of, you know, help bring a diverse perspective. So those are some of my thoughts.
Thank you. That's helpful. Ms. Kendrick, did you have your hand up?
I did, and I was going to offer a rewrite, but Casey Carl put in the chat an option that I also fully support.
Well, once again, the clerk.
And I can read it because I do have it up.
Go ahead.
Demonstrate deep personal awareness and appreciation for the importance that the city's diversity plays in the redistricting process. And it is in the chat for those who want to review it.
Any comment on that? Ms. Weber?
My only thought is this starting to overlap with desired eligibility bullet points that we're making? Is this still an active duty? And I'm not saying it's not. I just want to bring our attention to that it may be overlapping that perspective as well.
Yeah, demonstrate is not I think you're right. Demonstrate is not a duty. If we could come up with a different word than demonstrate, like consider. You have a duty to exercise. I guess awareness is not something you exercise, but I think we're getting there. Let me suggest this. Commissioner Hawkins is correct in her observation that we're probably overthinking this. But if Ms. Weber and Commissioner Garcia and I can visit before the next meeting, we'll come up with something that I think maybe everybody can go along with, and we can deal with it at the next meeting. Okay? Does that make sense?
Mr. Chair.
Yep.
This is Barry.
Yep.
Please look at the language that Casey just suggested and that Nicole is entering
Okay,
right now.
I gotta find it.
It reads, ensure the city's diversity is reflected in decision-making in the redistricting process.
Okay, ensure is good. Because that's a duty. I would have no problem with that. Anybody else have any comment?
The only comment, Mr. Chair, it's Casey. The only comment I would add is to tie back to what your attorney, Ms. Bashun, had said earlier, and I think Ms. Weber had noticed this, because the desired qualification or quality of the people selected is to demonstrate that deep personal awareness and appreciation. This more task-oriented focus connects both the duty of the member and the qualifications that you're seeking. So I think that makes a nice package together. I
like it. I think that that's what we wrestled with yesterday. And so without objection, let's put that in there. And we'll have a number of days to weigh it before we have the next meeting, the final meeting. Ms.
Chair
Kendrick?
Kozak, yep, this
Yes.
is Christina. I completely support the last rewriting that Casey offered. And then to Nicole's point of qualifications, I also completely agree that it's a nice tie.
Thank you. Good. And thank you for the help. So I have to find out what the next item on the agenda is. Does that conclude what we need to talk about on this section?
We might want to just scroll down and just make sure there are no other comments or concerns about the rest of this document, if that's okay.
Absolutely. Just, okay, Mr. CV. No, Carol Bashum, I'm sorry.
I just wanted to say one thing that for sure we have to look at is the whether somebody should be able to nominate others for consideration, where we then send an application out to that person. So you can continue looking at the rest, but I just wanted to make sure that you at a minimum covered that. Commissioner Kozak, I have one other thing that we could talk about in the time commitment. It's just a typo from when I made a mistake earlier. Under the time commitment, maps will likely be completed by April 1st. I think the deadline is like March 29th. So I think that
Okay.
I had miscalculated that when we started working on, like Nicole and Casey and I started working on, or Nicole and I worked on this document. And it's actually, we have to be done by like March 29th unless there's some other weird issues that come up. So that really should be April 1st. That's my mistake.
No problem at all. As long as without any objection, let's do that. Thank you. And going back to your previous issue, I think that's a kind of a serious. There's some serious concerns there that we better discuss. Does anybody have any suggestions? Nicole?
We can come back to mine. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, it's Casey. Commissioner Sandberg had addressed this point, Mr. Chair, and she has a comment in the chat she may want to make.
Yep. I'm sorry. Go ahead, Commissioner.
Thank you. Sorry I missed this point before. I absolutely strongly feel that people have to nominate themselves. If they're not interested enough to fill out an application, they can certainly be told by somebody about the process, but they should fill out their own application if that's what that means. Otherwise, I think you could be opening up a world of hurt for the advisory group. That's just what I think, though.
Yeah, even old timers understand what phishing is. So I would have no objection unless there's some serious concern to doing exactly what you're saying, Commissioner Jan. What about other folks? Any other opinions or perspectives? So let's take it out. Nicole, does that make sense? Can you do that?
You got it.
Okay, that's a done deal. Anything else we need to discuss on this in this part? Nicole?
Yes, actually, this is a question for Christina. Carol Bashun and I, when we were going through this yesterday, Carol brought it to my attention that it is listed in here that applicants could contact NCR for information on where to find their local organization where they could obtain copies of the application. And we just want to make sure that's okay to put, because part of me is afraid I don't want people to reach out with questions about the application for NCR. You know, they should reach out to us so that NCR is not in a position to have to answer questions they may not have the answer to. But I also want to provide people the resource to locate their local organization. So what are your thoughts on that contact information being in here?
That's fine. And that it's actually accurate. Our website and our neighborhood staff do help folks find out who their neighborhood organization is. So I don't see any problem with this.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anybody else? Any other piece we need to?
Yes, Commissioner Kozak, this is Carol Bashun again. Yeah, we just need to see my suggestions above application process, and that paragraph under there. I think that's all taken care of above.
Okay.
Right? I mean, Nicole can, I mean, there's another section that says application process and it lays out various links, and that's the one that Nicole just talked about too. So I think that paragraph should be removed unless somebody else has an issue with that.
I don't see any hands, so let's do it.
Just so I'm clear, Carol, I'm sorry, is that the section that I have highlighted here, the see my suggestion?
Yeah, I just noticed that actually you can get them in person. We didn't put that under the application process above. So maybe you can the paragraph above that, see application process. It doesn't say that you can get an application from room 304 City Hall. I just suggest that, you know, maybe you can work with the two chairs and just make sure that you have everything in one place that includes, you know, physically going into room 304 City Hall.
Yeah, I wondered about that because going to City Hall in person these days is kind of a daunting prospect, even with when the fences come down. So.
Yeah, but I think that I understand the office is open.
Right. Yeah, I was told that, we were told that yesterday. As long as people know they have options and that it's convenient for them to get a hold of this application. So is it clear, Nicole? We can work with that?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I'll answer for her. That's clear for me.
Okay, good. Any other discussion on this phase of the agenda? Because I want to get to the interview process, which may be problematic and take some time. And I don't want to have us run too long, because I know people have tight schedules. So we're on now was it 5.2 part of the agenda? And that's the interview process. So we have some redlining here we want to look at. Can you make it a little bigger? That's good. That's good. Thank you. I think we talked about other than election judge already, right? And I think we dealt with, to me, one of the key issues. Not all applicants must be interviewed. Or how would we want to say will be interviewed?
Christina Kendrick was seeking recognition. Ms. Kendrick, maybe you should go.
Thank you, Casey. Chair Kozak, I'm just wondering on the interview, it's the way it states now that even though they're eligible, they may not be interviewed. Is that what we're trying to say?
I think so. Commissioner Garcia?
Yes, I would say that we're going to get, anticipating, I don't know, say 40, 50 applications. We may not be able to interview everyone. And so that's what it is saying.
Do you feel you want to explain the process then of how you select those you're going to interview?
I think the first pass will be clerk staff looking at the yes or no questions.
But that's to determine if they're eligible.
Right.
To be interviewed,
And then,
not
then the rest follows, Christina. They need to work through the whole process. I think your questions are answered lower on.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Thank you. Sorry.
Yes.
Commissioner Sandberg? I think Jan Sandberg has her hand up.
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, I think what you mean in the first bullet is not all eligible applicants must be interviewed. Clearly, you're not going to interview the ineligible ones. And last time we had, yes, because of the election judge issue, we had a number of ineligible applications. But it sounds like what you're saying is even if someone's eligible, you may not interview all of them. So I would just say not all eligible applicants must be interviewed. Then how you choose to decide among those is interesting. I need to look at this again. Anyway.
And I would say not must, but will.
Okay. Will be, yes. Excellent.
And I guess my question is, unless it's down farther down and I don't remember, do we have to specify here on what the criteria will be, even to grant an interview, in-person an interview?
Mr. Chair, your attorney, Ms. Bashoon, has her hand raised too.
Yes. Carol?
I'm sorry, I was going to just talk about one other issue. I suggest that the chairs and Nicole just go over in the eligibility. It talks about when you answer yes or no's to different questions and whether you're no longer eligible. I would suggest that you look at those. I was looking at, I think that's there's some errors in that when I'm looking at the application. So you can just revise that when you three meet.
Okay.
Okay.
We will take care of
and
that.
that's very technical, and that's what the city clerk's office will do.
Okay. Commissioner Garcia.
Yes, thank you. I would like to provide an overview as to what our intent is, and then welcome comment on how, well, and how, number one, how that sounds, and number two, if there's any way to make that clear. Our intent is under C, there's the competencies and the interview questions. And one thing I propose is literally having an evaluation score sheet that I have a draft of, and I've been in process of drafting, where we can actually, it would be an Excel spreadsheet where we would actually have a guide that says this is what number 1 through 10, this is what needs to be said if you score number 10, and then this is what would qualify as a number 2, for example. And then we have a Excel spreadsheet where we can weight the questions perhaps in order of importance, and then assign a number to each and have comments at the bottom. And this is what I do professionally, is I work on competitive grant reviews. So my mindset going into this, and maybe we need to be transparent and say, we will have a scoring process that will score these. But my mindset going into these is, if someone were unhappy with the process and they filed a Freedom of Information request to see, you know, the what we did as part of our process, that we should be able to provide them this the range of scores. Obviously, perhaps not with the individual people, but the range of scores and where they fell in there, and provide some kind of reason why our decision was the way it was. And I'm happy to answer any clarifying questions around that.
Okay, I think let me give our city attorney, Carol Bashoon, give her chance to think about what you're suggesting, to see what kind of legal implications. You mentioned Freedom of Information Act, but any kind of data privacy or any kind of issues that having a score sheet, a documentation of how we decided, if that's got any legal implications. In the meantime, let me ask, turn to Ms. Kendrick. You had a comment before we go on?
I just want to say I fully support that, and it was a recommendation I put forward whenever we put together committees such as this. We typically do have a pretty transparent outlining of how selection is made, whether it's joining an advisory committee such as this, or whether it's who gets funding or other support through the city, etc. So I highly recommend that the redistricting group or the charter committee here consider putting together criteria on how they're selecting the applicants.
Okay, I think I don't know if Commissioner Garcia has access to some examples of how you guys have done it.
Yes.
Commissioner Garcia, do you have any examples from the city already?
I would say, well, not from the city, but what I would say is under section C, add a narrative in there that says applicants will be evaluated based on the following. Answers will be rated on a scale of 1 to 10. And if we do weight them differently, which we really don't have to, because that might get us into having to explain why we weighted things differently, have a little chart that says, you know, this is how many questions we have. If we give X number of points to each one, these are the total number of points possible. But I think if we're gonna determine any kind of qualifications and how suitable they are to serve using what's listed in 1 and 2 is the way to go, and just making it more clear that there will be a more formal evaluation.
Okay, anybody else have a comment? Ms. Bashoon, do you have any observations?
Commissioner Kozak, we do have an HR department that works on assisting with hiring, and they may be able to give their opinion on some of this. It does make sense to know how you're going to score. As far as the Data Practices Act, there are statutes that deal with you know, what's public and what's not public when you're scoring an individual. So that's under Minnesota statutes 13.43 and 13.34. All of that would relate. And then 13.601 also deals with these individuals. But there are statutes that deal with what would and would not be public and what would and would not be available to the actual applicant. So I don't think that's a real problem, but I think it makes sense to determine how you're going to score applications, and I think HR has done that in the past. And HR has also set up interview questions in the past, and then they have like, what are some of the good answers or some of the topics that people should discuss in their answer. So that's been done in the past. So if in fact HR can help with some of these issues, that might be a really good thing, so that we can keep things uniform between applications for city employees and these advisory group members.
Okay, thank you. Ms. Weber.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Bashoon. After you had encouraged me to reach out to HR for this, I have been in contact with them. They have responded to me to say they'd be happy to review the documents. I've sent them our previous drafts, and I'm going to be sending them the drafts after our meeting wraps today. And they are planning to get back to us with their recommendations and opinion by next Tuesday.
Okay, thank you. Commissioner Garcia, how does that sound?
That sounds great. That sounds
Okay.
great.
Okay, because I'd be
One
anxious to see what your matrix looks like.
Yes, it's very similar, I would think. One thing I want to mention as we go further in this process is, I don't know if it's in here, but we discussed the fact that technically these are open to the public, these interviews, and technically other charter commissioners may participate in them as well. My recommendation, and we had not settled on anything yet, is that if charter commissioners who are not part of the interview group do wish to participate, I suggest that they do so as a member of the public, meaning that we don't see their names or their pictures, because number one, in order for this to be the most fair and transparent, the group of interviewers needs to be unified. They need to have the message. They'll go through, a little training, and those who are not part of the interview team, even though they may be chomping at the bit to participate, that it be clear that they are observers. And then we also don't want participants perhaps seeing their name or seeing their picture and getting the impression that they will weigh in at all. So we just wanted to keep things as clean in all perspectives as possible, so that it's just transparent who's asking the questions, and then other people are watching, and the additional commissioners may be part of the other people that are watching.
Understood. We have a comment from Commissioner Sandberg.
I'm sorry I'm talking so much today. So I just want to make it be clear to myself. So you're going to have all the applications will go through Casey's office to clear out the ones who are clearly ineligible. Okay, and there will be a few, I'm sure. So then will you have a set of criteria to decide, so that you can do a paper review on the applications to decide who to interview? And will you, are you considering having, we will consider interviewing at least 30 people or some kind of number out there? Or is it just going to be, we're going to go through and pick the ones that kind of fit our set? And I'm not sure exactly how that would work. Then it sounds like of those you choose to interview, and I think last time we interviewed 21 people, would you have a refined version of your checklist to use to decide how to rank those applicants, or something similar for your final committee decision? And I know Commissioner Garcia has that idea. My second question is it likely that there will still be a remote meeting requirement this summer? If there is, there could be actually allow some in person, but with a limit of say 15 or 20, which creates a whole nother issue. So then would you have Teams as an option and do a hybrid? So just a few more questions. I'm sure you know what you're doing here.
Okay, let me answer the second question first, or give it a try, and then I'll defer to Commissioner Garcia. As to whether there'll be in-person interviews this summer, that's up to the governor probably. In other words, are we going to get the all clear to do more stuff? I think that if we're allowed, at the very least, we should try to do a hybrid, and failing that, then we just do the teams. But I just don't know. Things look good one day, and then you hear, oh, there might be some issues, and I guess we just have to wait and see. As for the first question, I think when we would sit down to decide how many we're going to interview, maybe come up with a a provisional target, but all of a sudden, if we have a bunch of applicants that we kind of we like because of their criteria, we'll be flexible. But Commissioner Garcia, comment?
I would say it's hard to, first of all, it's hard to say, it's hard to give a ballpark if we don't know how many we have. We could use a percentage, but then again, that may be difficult to say. I would suggest, as part of consulting with HR, HR score process should be such that you can take the application in the scoring process, just like you do a cover letter and a resume in the scoring process, and compare those head to head. And we can do that as a way to identify the top scores and then conduct the interviews with those folks, which will pretty much be the same questions. It's just a matter of doing that in-person interview and asking simple questions such as, will you serve in a nonpartisan basis? And which there's a number of reasons that face-to-face or albeit virtual interviews take place. So that's what my take would be. First, do yes or no's and determine eligibility on that. Then take what they submitted in writing in a simple score sheet in writing, compare those, and then from those take people to interview.
Okay, thank you. I guess I've been informed we're up against the clock here. So, but I want to give Ms. Kendrick a chance. You have your hand up.
Yes, thank you. I'll be very, very quick. Is it absolutely required that these interviews are open to the public? Because if they're not, I recommend not doing that. If they are, then that's irrelevant. The other thing is, it might be worth your time, if we're going to provide folks with technology so they can participate, to put that somewhere. So whether it's in the application or in the job description, if we're providing technology, and that's something to think about, because if lack of technology, such as access to internet or access to a laptop or both, if that's a barrier, I just want to put that in the space.
Okay. Let me answer your first question, or give you a tentative answer, and I'll defer to our clerk, Mr. Carl, or to Carol Bashoon. I recall back in 1981 getting interviewed by the Charter Commission. That's how I got on the original reapportionment commission, and we were all the interviews were live down at City Hall, and they were all open to the public. And Carol, what do you think?
Commissioner Kozak, typically when the city does interview individuals, it is not open to the public. And also when they are scoring sheets or discussing applicants to determine who they will interview, that is not open to the public. And so I would suggest that maybe those are issues that you could discuss with the HR staff to see if that's advisable. I mean, I think a lot of information that is not public would be discussed in the interview and also during the scoring process. So I don't know that there's a statute that requires these to be open to the public. Therefore, it might be best to not have them open to the public. But I think those are good questions for the HR staff that could assist you, and that might be a good meeting between the two chairs and Nicole and the HR staff.
I agree. We will take that advice. Commissioner Garcia, do you agree? That's a,
Yes, I do.
okay, thank
And
you.
also, quickly to speak to what Ms. Kendrick said about technology, it may have gotten lost in all the markups and back and forth, but we did have a spot in there where we said that if people lack technology or access, that we would make accommodation for them to fully participate in meetings.
Mhm.
And yes, Nicole, if you look at Nicole's piece in the chat, that covers it. Thank you.
Okay, one more, Carol, Ms. Bashoon, you had your hand up still?
I'm sorry, I'll lower it.
Okay. Unless there are any significant questions about the rest of this, and remember, we're going to meet next week. And so anyone that's got a question can contact either myself or Jill, or have us contacted through Nicole or Casey. But we have one more item on the agenda, and that is item number 6. Reviewing the redistricting rules and procedures as they pertain to the process of the redistricting advisory group member selection. Do we have anything that we need to deal with on item number 6? Anybody have any comments? Are there the rules? I know there may be some rules folks here. I don't see any hands up, so it must be perfect. So if that's the case, I'm going to suggest to ask if no one has any questions, we can entertain a motion to adjourn, and we will be back next week. I think we're scrolling the item. Any comments or questions? Nicole, you have your hand up.
I think the reason this was listed as an agenda item was Chair Garcia's thought that because the rules and procedures do have elements that pertain to what the advisory selection work group is doing, it's good to go through those items just for transparency for the public to follow and connect those dots if they're not attending both or viewing both types of meetings between the rules meetings and these meetings. So I think this is also something we could maybe go through a little bit more when we have more time at the next meeting as well.
Okay, we'll make sure that happens. Anybody else? I don't see any hands, so I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Okay. Anybody second? Want to go home?
I don't know that we need a second, but.
Yes,
Okay.
Mr. Chair, I think you could just say without objection, we are adjourned, so we don't have to take a roll call.
Okay, I hear no objection, so we're going to be adjourned. Thank you all very much. We are adjourned.
Thank you.